Paraguay asked Taiwan to invest $1 billion to remain allies. Euro-dollar parity a golden opportunity for investors. Europe braces for mobile network blackouts. At least 260,000 Russians have fled military call-up. Australia flags tough new data protection laws. Moscow to draft fleeing Russian men at borders. Spanish vultures released in Cyprus to replenish population. Mexico is world's deadliest spot for environmental activists.
Hello, I'm Johnny. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. It's Friday, September 30th, and here are your top stories. The Financial Times reported Paraguay's President Miguel Abdo Benefits has called on Taiwan to invest $1 billion in his country to help him resist enormous pressure to switch diplomatic recognition to rival China. Abdo told the Financial Times during a visit to the U.S. that we are working with the President of Taiwan so that the Paraguayan people feel the real benefits of the strategic alliance. The Financial Times said Beijing has been gradually pricing Taiwan's allies away with offers of aid, loans, and trade.
Brings us together with the great responsibility of exchanging ideas and generating commitments.
Paraguay's president said there is Taiwanese investment of more than $6 billion in countries which don't have diplomatic relations with Taiwan. We want from that $1 billion to be put in Paraguay. The Financial Times cited an email from Taiwan's foreign ministry that said Abdo's hope for $1 billion in Taiwanese investment would have profound significance for the Taiwan-Paraguay strategic partnership. The government encourages Taiwanese businesses to visit the country and explore investment there.
When the euro fell below parity with the US dollar, it also marked the currency's lowest level in 20 years. The last time the euro was at parity with the dollar was 20 years ago in November 2002. The currency shared by 19 European countries has slumped more than 11% since the beginning of this year. However, this decline is not exactly representative of euro's value relative to the dollar and has more to do with the divergence in the monetary policies of the US Federal Reserve and the European Central Bank.
Dollar index reached 108.19, highest since October 2002. US currency has gained on expectations that Fed will continue to aggressively raise rates.
Experts opine that this is a great opportunity for investors looking to get the most out of their dollars to explore investment opportunities in Europe. As everything turned red in terms of stock, crypto, and real estate, now is the time for people to invest in something that is already discounted, diversifies their currency, and with interest rates that don't directly affect their investment. This is a golden opportunity for those who are in dollar-pegged currencies to make gains through investment, tourism, business expansion, or franchise partnerships.
Since currently there are not enough backup systems in many European countries to handle widespread power cuts, mobile phones could go dark around Europe this winter if power cuts or energy rationing knock out parts of the mobile networks across the region. Telecom industry officials say they fear a severe winter will put Europe's telecoms infrastructure to the test, as most of the nearly 500,000 telecom towers in Europe have battery backups that last around 30 minutes to run the mobile antennas.
When you're at home or in the office, that's taken care of by Wi-Fi. But when you go out into the world, you need a cellular network to keep you connected.
EU countries are trying to ensure communications can continue. In France, a plan put forward by electricity distributor Enid's includes potential power cuts of up to 2 hours in a worst-case scenario. Swedish telecom regulator PTS is financing the purchase of transportable fuel stations and mobile base stations that can connect to mobile phones to handle longer power outages. Deutsche Telekom will use mobile emergency power systems, which mainly rely on diesel, in the event of prolonged power failures.
The independent newspaper Novaya Gazeta Europe reported that officials in Moscow have acknowledged 261,000 have left Russia in just 4 days. Some estimates now put the number who have gone into exile since the invasion in February at 400,000. The flow is expected to continue, especially from Russian Federation republics in Central Asia, where locals complain a disproportionate number of people have been called up. The Russian government has admitted errors were made during the military call-up.
No to war, they chant. Russia without Putin.
A man who has left his home in Saratov for Georgia said, "There is a feeling that the government does not know how to organize it. It seems that they want to close the border, but at the same time, they are afraid that protests may follow, and they let people leave." An official told the media that the Security and Defense Ministry in Moscow is seeking to persuade Putin to close borders to men of military age before it's too late. Western officials were unsure whether popular discontent will lead to any attempt at regime change.
Australian Attorney General Mark Dreyfus said the government would make urgent reforms to the Privacy Act following the unprecedented hack last week on Optus, Australia's second-largest wireless carrier. Dreyfus said Australia could have tough new data protection laws in place this year in an urgent response to a cyber attack on a telecommunications company that stole the personal data of 9.8 million customers. Optus could potentially be fined a maximum $1.3 million for breaching the Privacy Act.
A majority of the justices of the High Court of Australia will be women for the first time since Federation.
Dreyfus said penalties for failing to protect personal data had to be increased so that corporate boards could not dismiss fines as a cost of doing business. The government blames lax cybersecurity at Optus for the theft of current and former customers' personal information. The data included passport, driver's license, and national healthcare identification numbers. That became apparent on Tuesday when the hacker dumped the records of 10,000 customers on the dark web, 6 days after Opus discovered the cyber attack.
Moscow reportedly set up draft offices at borders to intercept some of the Russians trying to escape being caught up to fight in Ukraine, while long lines of them continued to clog highways out of the country on Wednesday. Russian news agencies said North Ossetia restricted many passenger cars from entering its territory and set up a draft office at the Verkhy-Lars border crossing. Some media outlets released photos at the crossing showing a black van with Military Enlistment Office written on it.
Verkhy-Lars is a town near the border between Georgia and North Ossetia, where the fleeing traffic jam stretched for about 15 kilometers on Tuesday. According to the independent Russian news outlet Meduza, another such draft checkpoint was set up in Russia along the Finnish border. While Russia has land borders with 14 countries, Kazakhstan reportedly has taken in more than 98,000 Russians in the past week. Georgia's Interior Ministry said over 53,000 Russians had entered the country since last week.
The Life with Vultures CY group said on Wednesday that some 15 griffon vultures from Spain have been released into the wild in Cyprus to help revive the island population that's dropped to just 8 to 10 birds because of deliberate poisoning. A recent study suggested that the species of bird would disappear from Cyprus in about 15 years if nothing was done to eliminate the poisoning threat and replenish the population with vultures brought from abroad. Spain hosts 90 to 95% of Europe's population of vultures.
The griffon vulture, which can grow up to 1.2 meters long and have a wingspan of 2.8 meters, feeds on animal carcasses. From previous releases of vultures elsewhere in Europe, it's expected that the birds will intermingle with the remaining indigenous vulture population at feeding and roosting locations. Conservationists say restoring the local vulture population to its former numbers remains a long-term goal, with the most pressing issue being to eradicate the use of poison bait in the wilderness.
According to a global survey released Wednesday, Mexico has become the deadliest place in the world for environmental and land defense activists. The murder of indigenous land defenders often conjures up images of Amazon activists killed deep in the jungle. In addition, Colombia and Brazil account for many of the deaths. According to a report by the non-governmental group Global Witness, Mexico saw 54 activists killed in 2021 compared to 33 in Colombia and 26 in Brazil.
Global Witness's data showed 200 environmentalists died in 2021 worldwide. Latin America accounted for over 2/3 of those slayings, often the bravest and most well-respected people in their communities, such as Thomas Rojo in Mexico, who was found dead in June 2021 when state authorities built a pipeline to siphon off Yaqui's water for use in the state capital, Jaramillo. Rojo led a series of demonstrations and acts of civil disobedience, which caused millions in losses for businesses and industry.
FUNDAY News will help you sharpen your English skills and keep you informed about international current events. If you want to know more about our other programs and keep learning about the world's most important topics in English, please click the link in the description below to join FUNDAY for free. And that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining us on FUNDAY News. I'm Johnny Wu, your host. I will see you next time.